lot happening. We talked about it last night on the Buddy Martin Show. Recruits, there's going to be movement in the aisles. You better hang on to what you got. That December signing date is coming up. We'll have news happening there. It's going to be Let's Make a Deal. Monty Hall, come back. We need you. Rob Brown, Brendan Martin, executive producer in Ocala, Florida.
Good morning.
Going to start off in the bullpen. Jake Wimberly down in Jackson, Mississippi, 105.9 ESPN. The Afternoon Drive has a great show. Puts out a ton of content. Norman Jetmundsen joins us, author of a really cool book. You can see it behind me, Sewanee 1899, Unrivaled, the history of college football. And man, now more than ever, are we tapping in to this great game, which is 155 years old. Dudley Dawson, hogville.net, checks in. Vince Ferrara from the Sports Animal up in Knoxville. Smash that subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner. Look, there are a lot of places you can watch this show live, Brendan. I was pointing out yesterday, Twitter, X, Facebook, YouTube. We're live on 7 different channels, and then Brendan puts out small bites all over the social media universe. There's a ton, so watch us, subscribe. That way you'll get a ding every morning when the show starts. Let's go ahead and crank it up and get started. It's brought to you by Landers Ford, the #1 Ford.com. Open Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. service department to 6 p.m. and the regular sales 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Closed only on Sundays. Brad Bellamy, the GM, will help you. New cars, trucks, SUVs. Got to check out the Bronco, the Sasquatch package, the F-150s, the King Ranches. They have got Expeditions, Explorers, huge inventory, and they deliver anywhere. So if you're watching, you say, hey, I want to talk to Landers, call them, talk to Brad Bellamy. They're giving $500 off to people who said they heard about it on Sidelines. Every little bit helps. I promise you, their motto is true. If you didn't buy your last vehicle from Landers Ford, you probably paid too much. Jake, there's movement in the aisles, and I had a chance Monday night to talk with Chad Bumpus, wide receivers coach at Mississippi State, and he had one of his recruits, a running back from Bartlett High School, who was the Touchdown Club Prep Player of the Week. It's all about relationships, man. I told that guy, I said, man, if I was a kid, I'd want to play for you. He's out of Tupelo. It's getting intense, man. Looks like there's movement in the aisles. Ole Miss snagging players. Everybody's doing it to each other. So it happens to you, you're going to get somebody else. But then we had the playoff rankings go last night, CFP. Man, you take it from here because there's a lot of arguments on that from what they've come out with. But that's what they did it for, I assume.
Oh, absolutely. And good to be with you guys as always. Before we get to the playoff committee and what happened last night, Chad Bumpus, look, you talk about a dude that was a heck of a player coming out of Tupelo High School and then a heck of a player at Mississippi State, really a part of, what Dan Mullen was able to do to kind of, springboard his whole campaign at Mississippi State, now doing a great job as, wide receivers coach and one of the recruiting coordinators there at Mississippi State. So, and that's the thing for Jeff Levy is we were talking about this yesterday with David Murray from Gene's Page, 247 Sports on our show, is that, it's all about recruiting for Mississippi State. It's the future right now. You got 2 ball games left to play, Missouri and Ole Miss. You want to do as good as you can, but it's about building those pieces, for the future. As far as last night is concerned, I'll be honest with you, not too much of a shock. I had put my rankings out earlier this week, just kind of projecting. Top 4, is pretty much the same. Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, and then you can start getting a little dicey depending on who you look at, who goes what, when, and where, and guys, for me, Ole Miss, we talked about this. I think the win against Georgia, that was going to push them right inside the door and maybe Georgia right outside the door. And that's what you saw happen. Now, Georgia obviously is not out of it. I tell you what it does show, I think, is that potentially this Georgia-Tennessee game this weekend is an elimination ball game. If Georgia loses this one, they are done. Tennessee could be done. But, if you love chaos, if you want to love chaos, then you're rooting for the SEC to finish with about 7, 10, and 2 teams. And that actually could happen with Georgia beating Tennessee this weekend. And you look at some of the other teams out there, if Texas A&M was to beat Texas, it could really, really get really crazy in the SEC over the next 3 weeks.
Well, you start thinking about the controversy that we might have or might not have. It's great for eyeballs, that's for sure. Tennessee, and we're going to have Vince Ferrara on here shortly from the Sports Animal in Knoxville. They're sitting there, I think, at 7th. Is that correct?
6th. Yeah.
6, yeah. Indiana at 5. I'll tell you one thing, coast to coast and everywhere in between, people are paying attention. Oregon at number 1. Well, they beat Ohio State, who's number 2. It seems like it's stacked. 1, 2, 4 of the top 5 from the Big Ten. You think that has anything to do with the fact that about maybe 80% of the TV sets in America live in the footprint, the geographical footprint that is the Big Ten?
Possibly. It could be possibly that. That's the thing, guys, with these committees. And look, there's no doubt that there's a lot of intelligence on committees. This committee per se, not all committees. And Rob, you know this in the business world that you've worked in your life. Just because you have a committee doesn't mean that it's always, a brain trust. Right. And
correct.
I always tend to lean towards there's going to be some bias with some of this. There's going to be some logos that are going to take precedence over another logo. For instance, Texas logo is always going to be bigger than the BYU logo. The Ohio State logo is always going to be bigger than the SMU logo. So it could be some TV sets. Now, I will tell you this. Oregon, I do still think is the best team in the country. I think they have the best quarterback in the country. They have the best receiving unit in the country. That team is really, really good. Doesn't mean that they can't be beat. Ohio State is there. I think we're going to find out next week what Indiana is all about. And, they travel to Ohio State, and that'll be a Heisman-type ball game for Rourke, the quarterback at Indiana. And then Penn State, look, Penn State is the best 10-2 team in the country. They're not winning the national title, though. Their offensive numbers, when they play elite teams, we saw it with Ole Miss last year, Ohio State this year, Michigan last year. For whatever reason, James Franklin's teams do not play well in those games.
Yeah, he's 1-13 against top 5 teams. But Brandon, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was, first of all, Jake, you're awesome. Thanks for coming on. I think you're awesome. You're a stats and graphics guy, so that's near and dear to me. Welcome to the show. And I wanted to ask this particularly to you, Jake, so I saved it for you because it's deep and it's cerebral, requires lots of intelligence. So you're the smartest guy I know. So just kidding. I don't really think that deeply.
He's a civil engineer. You're damn right he is.
No, you shouldn't think
I'm not a rambling wreck from Georgia Tech. Okay. I am not a hell of an engineer. Okay. But I can DoorDash coffee. Listen. So I would like to know if you guys agree or disagree with the current status of Carson Becks and Lambos, right? And kids flying all over the place and all this crazy stuff. Now, mind you, I'm from the West. I'm from Colorado, right? I have seen a lot of BYU football, a lot. I know a lot of people. I know a lot of Mormons. I don't think you call them Mormons anymore. Actually, some of my greatest friends. No judgment. Great human beings. No complaints as far as people I know and experiences and all that. And I don't get into people's world and I don't play that game. But they be organized and they be flush. Okay, really flush. It's something that we don't talk about very much because we talk about big oil money, we talk about tech money, we talk about Oregon and having corporate money. Right, number one corporate. One word school to do well in the corporate space in NIL right off Jump Street when NIL and has remained there. Obviously has Nike. Okay, I get that. So anyway, with Army, with BYU, you just got a different animal because they can still do that old school Earl Bruce run them and go like they can still do Junction Boy style football. And they got money. People understand BYU's got so much money. That's like oil money times 10 because they've got oil money and Coke money.
They get a lot of money.
Yeah. And so I think, do we see this emergence continue in programs that have the ability to keep a structure, that have the ability to hold on to their players for another reason outside of football, outside of the constraints of a scholarship or something like that? Now you've got a kid that's got to go on a mission right? Now you got a kid that's got to go into the armed forces. Does that, you get what I'm saying? Or am I just totally being
I
idiot
think
here?
I do. I don't think that's a idiotic statement at all. And I think there's something to that. And I think it's something that we need to watch over the coming years. Think about this. Recruiting rankings are not the same as they once were, which was even 2 or 3 years ago, in that Bama can't stack talent anymore. Georgia can't stack talent anymore. We can't stack it because of the transfer portal. These guys want to go play. So you see teams like Ole Miss taking advantage of the transfer portal and other things of that nature. To Brendan's point, yes, I do think there's something to be said about kids. Not every kid, and we don't really know which kid is doing what, but let's just take Carson Beck from what you said. Maybe the money is getting to his head. Maybe it is the Lamborghini. Maybe it's the fact that, Brock Bowers and McConkey aren't there anymore. I mean, there could be a litany of reasons why he's not playing well. But when you look at the structure of what you're saying with a BYU, where those guys are typically a little older than the other guys, they may be a little more grounded in not just necessarily faith, but faith and then also life. And they're not worried about, just watch the transfer portal fill up over the next few months. And see what these guys are asking for. So I do think there's something to it. Look, BYU may be a totally different model, like you said, than say what's going on in Oregon or Alabama or Georgia. I do think it's something we need to follow and we need to watch.
Well, yeah, and I think we're going to see that more and more here, because as time goes on, and like you said, when you have the constraint, when you have that other factor, right, that holding you in, like a religion, right, or a commitment, right, to the armed forces and things of that nature, you're on a life path, right? And it seems like when we start paying players $1 million a year, we're saying, hey, you could end your life path in this career here. Well, less than 1% of you are going to go pro anyway. So, you know what I mean? Look at what's happening to AR. Look at these guys. Look at what's happening. Get paid in college.
Well, that's what Dylan Gabriel did, in my opinion. He left Oklahoma for big. Not that Oklahoma doesn't have money, but he left Oklahoma and went to Oregon. He says he wanted to be closer to home. Well, why not go back to the University of Hawaii? I mean, come on.
Right.
You're in Oregon. It's still a 6-hour flight to Honolulu. But what I think, the Mormon church, there are about 15 million Mormons in the world. They got some serious cash. There ain't that many Episcopalians. And I'm telling you, you can't find an Episcopal church in any town where there ain't a lot of old money in there. I grew up in that church. Trust me, it's a great church, but there's money everywhere. And I know someone who works for a man that was a walk-on in Indiana football. And this guy's now worth about $25 billion. It's a hedge fund manager. People like that are starting to get excited about what's going on. So the old model of, we've always done it this way. That's not going to work anymore, Jake. It's not. And Indiana at number 5. I mean, how many people are waking up and going, man, I'm not drinking ever again? What about that?
Well, I think that's a hat tip to Kirk Cignetti, right? And how good a football coach he is and his staff. Yes. And, their ability to identify players like Rourke and to work the transfer portal, not necessarily maybe like Ole Miss did, or even like Ohio State did, or even Oregon to that degree, or say Colorado for that matter. But I think that speaks volumes to his staff. And look, it'll be interesting to see, does Indiana hold on to Cignetti, or is he the next Kalen DeBoer? In that, he now makes a move from, FCS to Division I, now to a power school, because we know there's going to be openings. We don't know which openings are going to be. It'll be interesting to see how long he actually stays a Hoosier.
Yeah. And Jake, stay with us if you can for about another 15 minutes, because I'm going to bring in Norman Jetmundsen, and we're going to talk about his book. And I know he loves the playoffs too. He spent 6 years with David Cruz out of Oxford, Mississippi, working on a documentary called Sewanee 1899 Unrivaled. It's about that history of they won the 5 games in 6 days, which is really, if I'm a football coach, I'm showing that to my team. But the history of football is what we get so excited about. And this is a cool story. We're going to have a neat discussion, but I want him to talk about he's got a new coffee table book that's behind me that's out there. Norman Jetmundsen is, bring him on into the show, is an attorney down in Birmingham. is an Alabama fan. And again, 6 years on this documentary. These things, it ain't like you're taking your phone out there and, taking a few pictures. Norman, you're a member of the Monday Morning Birmingham Quarterback Club, arguably the most philanthropic and generous civic club in America. Last year gave out over $1.6 million. They even, October 13th of 2021, had a helicopter fly into Protective Life Stadium on the 50-yard line. It's called QB1 for Alabama Children's Hospital. But more than anything, I think your passion, Sewanee was right. You're a Sewanee man. You've written about college football. Tell people about this book, and it's a great gift. And here we are talking about the playoffs and everything. But Sewanee still plays 130 years later on the same football field. But you got Jake Wimberly down in Jackson, Mississippi, ESPN 105.9, my executive producer in Florida, Brendan Martin. So let's talk about that book and that documentary.
Thank you so much, Rob. So as you know, it's been a passion project. David Cruz and I worked many years putting together a documentary film called Unrivaled, which ended up being shown on public television stations all over the country. And we just learned a couple of weeks ago that Delta Airlines is going to show our film starting in January. So we're really excited about that. What happened is we had a great artist in Birmingham, Ernie Eldridge, because there were no photographs from back then. So he painted 14 original paintings of different scenes from Sewanee's season. And when the film got done, I said, well, gosh, with these original artwork, with all this archival material, we found letters and memos that no one had ever found before. I said, we need to turn this into a coffee table book. So Karen Fectu, who is a graphic designer in Birmingham, used to work for Southern Living, now freelances. She and I collaborated on this coffee table book. And for those of you who don't know about this Sewanee team, it's the most remarkable season in college football history. Not only did they go 12-0 in 6 weeks, but they traveled 2,500 miles by train and played 5 games in 6 days, and all on the road. It was a brutal time in college football history. It was a brutal road trip, never be duplicated. And so it's really the start of modern day football, because Sewanee was the first team ever to travel around long distances. So they showed that could be done. And of course, that's a precursor to what we see in modern football.
Jake, what's cool about it is that when Alabama went to the Rose Bowl in 1925 to play Washington, they were the 4th or 5th choice. Nobody else wanted to do it. And Alabama took a train ride, took about 8 days each way out there. But this was the first train ride. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but jump in this conversation because I am a history fanatic, and I can't get enough of this stuff.
No, and I think this is fantastic. Norman, great to meet you. I'd like to talk to you on our show at some point about this book too. I had no idea this was a project that was going on. I like you guys, love college football history. Each year we try to spend some time, especially in the preseason, talking, history to, you go back and look as it predates, 1899 into World War I and World War II. And you get into, how the military was affected by college football and how, the roots are tied there, our military to college football, and the toughness of those football players, especially in that era where the forward pass, kind of comes into play in college football. But this is remarkable. And I remember hearing and reading just some excerpts on this, but think about this, guys. Was it 5 games in 6 days? There's not a team alive today, even with the athletes as well old as they are, that would even try to put this on today. I mean, could you imagine, just take Alabama, if they just went and they played Auburn today, Tennessee tomorrow? Oh, man, I mean, it's not happening anymore. And that tells you the toughness of those men of that day.
Yeah.
It's even more remarkable when you know that in 1899, there was no forward passing, so it was all a brutal ground game. God. There were no huddles, so as soon as the play was over, you lined up and ran the next one. Players played both ways, but remarkably, if you came out of the game, you couldn't go back in. So if you were a little bit gassed or a little bit injured, you couldn't go take a few plays off and come back in. You had to stay in unless you were really badly injured. And Jake, you mentioned military. One of the things I learned from doing this project is that the reason that football grew so quickly in the South was because of the Civil War. Those young men by the 1890s, their fathers and grandfathers had fought a war, North or South, and they wanted a way to prove their manhood, and football became a way to prove their manhood. So they didn't have wars to go to then, but they had football, and it was an important element in why football became so popular so quickly.
Hey, Norman, let me ask you this. You mentioned they couldn't go back in the game once they went out. Was that a rule change or a rule that was in effect as far as college football in that day, or was that kind of a just kind of a team motto, like if you come out, you can't go back in?
No, it was an actual rule. And for instance, we talk about on the famous road trip, the first team they played was Texas. Sewanee star halfback Henry Diddy Siebels got a big gash on his forehead in the first half. They played halves, 35-minute halves. Got a big gash. Instead of coming out of the game, he ran over to the sidelines. They put plaster of Paris on the cut, and he ran back in and played the rest of the game.
Oh,
That's amazing.
That's the kind of mentality they had back then.
yeah. I mean, Sewanee is such a special place. My great-great-grandfather was an Episcopal bishop who laid the cornerstone up there, Leonidas Polk. And I love that place. I was over at Rhodes College yesterday meeting with Matt Dean, who's on our show every Thursday, talking about this. That is the biggest rivalry with them. It's this history, Norman, and Jake gets it. Jake's a Mississippi State grad, one of the smartest people we have on this show. Jake, I'll send you Norman's contact information as soon as we go off the air, because when you hear these stories, Norman, we won't keep you long. I know you've got a busy day there in Birmingham, but tell some more of the stories, because I think Vanderbilt's coach Clark Lee kind of has a little connection to this as well. And boy, is he doing a hell of a job up there with he ain't exactly playing out of the same deck of cards as everybody else, and he's related to some of these guys.
Yeah, so first, Rob, you mentioned Rhodes. Sewanee and Rhodes played their first game in 1899, so that rivalry has been going on for 125
awesome.
years. And that's part of the history. Sewanee's football field, their first game was against Vanderbilt in 1891. They played every home game there since 1891. It's the oldest field in the South and the fourth oldest in the country. So there's a lot of history. And as you know, because of Sewanee's early football success, they were a founding member of the SEC. Now, they didn't do well in the SEC and went back to Division III. But one of the things, Rob, that we loved was when we started this, we thought, well, there'll be a lot of lore, but there really won't be much facts, but we'll just explore the lore and that'll be fun. What we found out was the facts and truth were better than the lore. And story after story, one of my all-time favorites, there was a player named William Claiborne. He was called Wild Bill Claiborne. He later became an Episcopal priest, by the way. But he had a bad eye, so he wore a patch over his eye during football games. And he was famous for when they started a game against a new opponent, he'd line up across the line of scrimmage, lift up his patch, point at his eye, and say, "This happened the last game. We'll see what happens today."
Lord.
And flip it back down.
Look, Norman, let me say real quick.
Wonderful
Jake's got to check out here in a second, but I want you to continue. But Jake, I know you got another question or two, but let people know how they can follow you. And again, I'll get you the contact. And Norman's a great guest to have on, and every time I learn something new, that's what I love about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're on today 3 to 6 here in Jackson, Metro, Central Mississippi. We cover 2/3 of the state on 105.9, the FM dial. We're also on the zone1059.com. We'll be talking a lot of college and the NFL today. Norman, great to visit with you. I'll definitely reach out to you when Rob sends that over. And Rob, always appreciate you and Brendan. Y'all do a great job, and thanks for having me as always.
You are the man of Magnolia. Thank you. Norman, tell a little bit more, and I know you've got a busy schedule as well. We've got Dudley Dawson, hogville.net, and Vince Ferrara from the Sports Channel in Knoxville coming on. And here all these schools are, and we're still playing. And, Sewanee, technically, if they want to get back in the SEC, along with Georgia Tech and Tulane, is welcome anytime to come back. But I just think it's cool to hear about the guy putting Plaster of Paris on there. The documentary, the DVD, how can people order that? Because, again, it's Christmas coming up. Can't think of a better gift for people that love football.
Thank you. Well, the DVD is available on our website, and let me put a plug. I ended up self-publishing this book, so it's all on my bailiwick, and you can order the book or the DVD from Sewanee1899.org. Sewanee, SEWANEE 1899.org. I'd really appreciate folks going and buying the book. It's fascinating story. It's a beautiful book. We printed it on museum grade paper with a state of the art printer, sewn hardbound book. It's a keepsake item that anybody who loves college football will learn a lot and enjoy looking at all the photos, archival material, as well as the stories.
And we have I'm running to the right. You see a QR code and a cover of the book. That QR code goes to the link he was discussing. So we always put the link of the author. Because my dad's a writer, my dad's Buddy Martin. So I know, I know how it works. So we always try to find the link. So that link you just discussed or you mentioned is the link that our audience sees right now. And if you want the link in the chat, just check it out. It takes it right to his website that he
Norman, Brendan's done a lot of documentary work, and
oh, yeah.
Norman, I think you can appreciate what Norman and David
Norman, I worked with a lot of gentlemen like Norman because I am post-production. I had a post-production house for a long time, and I worked with directors, and they'd come in with a whole bunch of footage, and we would do a whole lot of editing together. We'd get real close. So I know how that works.
Norman, before you go,
well, let me mention a unique thing about our book.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I just want to mention a unique thing for our film. We got musician Bobby Horton, who does all of Ken Burns' documentary music. Very talented guy. Bobby did the music score for our film, so we figured out a way. Talking about QR codes, we've got a QR code in the book where you can actually listen to Bobby's music score while you're reading the book. So we thought that was an extra benefit to getting the book
I love
out
that interactive stuff. That's cool.
Look, that artwork is, Norman, I'm telling you, you know this, but when you get frustrated about college football with all the stuff going on, pull this thing out and start reading it and looking at the pictures, and, we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. But Norman, I got to ask you real quick. You're an Alabama fan, Sewanee fan. You're there in Birmingham, which is the highest per capita football viewing audience in the world. What do you think about this 12-team playoff? You like all this? I mean, the interest and all, and it just dovetails into this story about Sewanee, about why we love this game so much. It just gets better every year. It's like a great bottle of wine.
Yeah, I think the 12-game playoff is a great development. We think of March Madness and the excitement around that. And our quarterback club had General Rich Clark speak earlier this year. He's the head of the playoff committee. And he talked about what they're doing. And their goal is, we know we have the conference championships in there, but their goal is to find the 12 best teams. And I think that will be a great way to determine who really is the best team in the country. It'll take a lot of arguments away because with 12 teams and the best in the country, you'll get to decide that on the field and not in everybody's personal opinion.
Yeah. Norman Jetmundsen, the author of great book, Sewanee 1899 Unrivaled, also a documentary. You saw the QR code on the screen. Norman, we got to get you back on again, and I'm going to send Jake Wimberly your information immediately after the show, and he'll get you on his show, and we'll start connecting you with everybody we can.
Super. Thank you. I hope you have me back. I got plenty more stories.
Will do, man. Thank you. That is, I tell you, Brendan, you as a documentary film guy yourself, you can appreciate it, as can Dudley Dawson. Oh, my God, that background, the Boston Mountains up in northwest Arkansas. Dudley, I got to head to Little Rock for a lunch meeting with a bunch of those Sigma News from Arkansas, Gamma Upsilon chapter that you met Jim McClellan over in at Bossa Nova today, 11:30. I'm looking forward to being over there. That's a cool story about Sewanee, Norman Jetmundsen, there in Birmingham. The book that's out that I was referencing here, and then the DVD, spent 6 years on it. Writing, film, history. This is college football now. Rankings came out. Texas comes to Arkansas. How excited. I'm talking grassroots Arkansas. This is now a conference game for the first time since 1991. And I don't know what gets Arkansas people more fired up, opening day of duck season or playing Texas. But you know better than I.
Well, I can answer that question. It's beating Texas.
Yes.
That's the biggest thing. Ironically, Texas has dominated this series to the tune of 56-23, but Arkansas has won the last two and 5 of the last 7. And Coach Sarkisian talked about it a little bit this week that, how much Arkansas hates Texas more than they love themselves or like themselves. This would be, again, I seem to come on here every week and talk about the narrative, another narrative changing win or loss. You cannot go out and have the same type of thing you had happen against Ole Miss. But if you were to stumble into this and win this football game, then, I think everybody's happy for a week or so. And maybe a couple of weeks because you have Louisiana Tech coming in next week. But it's big, growing up in this state, I get it. And, I my personal side still hates the Longhorns, but my objective side can tell they're a really, really good football team with 2 very good quarterbacks, a great offense, a great defense, and Arkansas will have to play damn near perfect to win this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, Sark is going to come up there knowing what happened in 21, and it was a bloodbath, and the Arkansas fans went crazy. What do the Hogs have an advantage in against Texas? Offense or defense, special teams, anywhere?
Just being home. I mean, I would like to be more optimistic for Arkansas fans, but when you look at the Texas offense they put out there against Florida last weekend, the screen game they've got going, the speed, they certainly have the speed advantage. They've had the recruiting advantage, really having the home field. And, I think the fact that they've tried to tell these kids how important this rivalry is to Arkansas, showed them some old games. I know there's some people criticizing that they're showing them the 1969 game that they lost and different things. But I think it's important for them to know how much the fans care. And they're still going to have to go out and execute it. And let's be honest, every game this year, you have more turnovers than takeaways, you lose. You have more takeaways than turnovers, you win. It's just that simple. And as I said, they're going to have to play a fantastic game, 11 a.m. Now that I'm 61, I am down with them 11 a.m. games.
I hate them. I call it the timeout game. I mean,
it used to be Jefferson Pilot. You were going in there because you really sucked.
Yeah.
But 11 a.m. is a prominent time these days.
I mean, if Texas and Arkansas, there's a lot of history there. And you look what the Big Ten has done. They've made Big Noon a big deal.
Yeah, and so is Urban Meyer. I mean, we talked to him about it all the
Yeah.
time. That's the number one show, their number one rated show. Hey, Dudley Dawson, what's your playlist like? Is it just like 1971 to 1984-ish music, or what are we looking at?
I will step into the 80s every once in a while, but here's how I roll. I'm a 70s guy. I'm a yacht rock guy. I'm so into the 70s. I went back and got my girlfriend from the 70s and married her.
All right. So, okay. So, and this is
Love
the
it.
last question because I'm fascinated with you and not in a weird way, but kind of weird because I'm fascinated with you. But anyway, but like best Led Zeppelin album, go.
Well, that's tough. You put me on the spot, and that is
I
one
know
of
it
those
is.
questions I was not expecting this morning.
I know.
I will think about it, and I will have that for you before the end of the
Fair
show.
enough. And I appreciate that answer.
You can't
Hey,
just
Dudley.
You just can't
It's
fly.
like, who's the top three?
Yeah, well, hey, look, real quick, while you're thinking about that, before Vince Ferrara joins us,
That guys are.
and Brendan, are we still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. We're here. My
Yeah,
yard guys
okay,
are
yeah,
here.
okay.
They're allowed as
Yeah,
hell.
I'm sorry, but no. Let me say something about Winter Timber Outdoors down in Athens, Alabama. You see the Rite Masamara GPS BOGO, buy one get one free. Check out that QR code. Let them know you heard about it on SEC Sideline Sports. They're located in Athens, Alabama. It is the nicest sporting store for the outdoor hunting sports, deer hunting, duck hunting, quail, dove, turkey. They've got over 2,000 shotguns, rifles, and handguns in the store. They have people that are trained, knowledgeable staff. Kenny Winter, Dylan Monroe. Wow. They've got partners that are really, really respected people in the outdoor hunting world. They've got the deer stands in the back. You can buy all the corn, everything that you need. Incredible lineup of outdoor clothing. They're a big Sitka dealer. Okay. Winter Timber Outdoors. They're breaking ground tomorrow in Auburn, Alabama for their second store. And their goal is to expand in the footprint that makes up the Southeastern Conference. What a great partnership. We are so proud and blessed. Can't thank people enough when they sponsor this show. It keeps the lights on. It's how we stay going. But Winter Timber Outdoors, call them if you're in the area right now around Athens, Alabama. It's right next to Huntsville. Go in the store, check it out. Again, just the products that they have, everything in there, top notch. And go to that website, and click the QR code, Winter Timber Outdoors. All right, guys. Holy cow. I love that question about Led Zeppelin. And so Vince Ferrara, when he comes back on with us, maybe he has one. But Dudley, what is your favorite Led Zeppelin album or song or two?
He doesn't want to answer. He said he's going to wait. He's not
No,
ready.
he's gonna wait. Okay.
It's not. You can't just answer
I thought
that.
about it a little bit, and this may be controversial.
Okay, bring it.
I'm going to go with Physical Graffiti.
Ooh,
I mean, from start to finish.
Wow.
Yeah.
From start to finish?
When Robert Plant, that's strong. Hey, Dudley, when Robert Plant,
how I feel about you right now.
Well, here's
well, hey, when
yeah,
Yeah.
it's music is different things to different people. I think some good Bud Lights and Physical Graffiti and can change the world.
Yeah, well, when Robert Plant came to Live at the Garden, July of 2013, we were about 20 feet from the stage, and my youngest son, Max, was up there in the mosh pit body surfing. He was 13. I mean, my kids are 70s music junkies, so Robert Plant, he did not play Stairway to Heaven. I think he actually gets annoyed when people ask for that. But Vince Ferrara, the Sports Animal 99.1 in Knoxville, jump in here. We've been talking to Dudley, the big matchup in the Boston Mountains, Ozarks, this Saturday, 11 a.m. Central, 12 noon Eastern against Texas. You mentioned in your comments this morning you want to talk about the rankings, and they've been a hot topic this morning. Vince Ferrara, proud native son of Tampa. Let her rip, man, because you got a lot to say, and we all need to hear it.
All right, appreciate it. Great to be on with you guys. And yeah, the playoff. I'll say this before I get into the specifics. None of this is like scream off the top of a mountain. This is the way it's going to be. Overreaction. These are issues and inconsistencies with the committee. It's going to change, so there's no point in getting too overly worked up because they're going to emphasize some other things before long, and The games oftentimes will bail them out to where they don't have to make as many tough decisions. But first of all, Tennessee at number 7. The committee chair, Ward Manuel, pointed out Indiana and BYU's big wins, as he termed them, in their rivalry games last week over a 500 Michigan team and a below 500 Utah team. Now, granted, that's a rivalry game. Big for them should not be big for the playoff committee in terms of moving the needle, right? We're trying to get the 4 best teams, not the 4 most emotional, accomplishment for your school teams. That's not what it should be about. So Indiana played a close game. BYU, you came down to a final call at the end when it looked like they had lost. But for them to go up 3 spots and hop over Tennessee, who they pointed out Tennessee's inconsistencies on offense, Tennessee had their best offensive game in a while, 452 yards. They won by 19. Yes, it was against Mississippi State, a bad Mississippi State team, but as Dudley knows, they can put up points on SEC opponents. They did it against Georgia, Arkansas, so they can do that. I don't get that Indiana, with their schedule being strict to schedule 100, jumping up like they did, and BYU as well. BYU at least has beaten 2 top 25 teams. Indiana's best win is Nebraska. I guess they're 5-4 now, so that's their best win. That's the only team above 500 that they've beaten, by the way. So it is really bad. Also, Miami only going down 5 spots. Miami has been playing with fire. They lost to Georgia Tech. Their defense continues to look terrible. They look flawed. I thought they were a fraud to begin with, and it was only a matter of time before they lost. So if you're going to talk about the eye test, Miami, Cam Ward passes the eye test. That team has not passed the eye test, in my opinion, but they only dropped 5 spots. Meanwhile, Georgia loses to a really good Ole Miss team, and they plummet 9 spots.
Yeah.
Who's taking Georgia and Miami? So that's another aspect of that. So, Alabama just destroys an LSU team that was rated high on the road, and they move up 1 spot. So it's just, there's a lot of things that are inconsistent. There's how I look at the Big Ten, who is heavily thought of, strongly thought of in these rankings. Oregon, Ohio State can beat anybody. SEC, anyone. They're 1 and 2. They're legit. If you take everybody else in that league, I'm picking them, Penn State, Indiana, I'm picking them to lose to a whole bunch of SEC teams if they were matched up with them. And bowl games often play that out. And I think in a 1-game situation in the college football playoff, it would play out that way, home or away. Ohio State and Oregon are the only 2 Big Ten teams I believe in that could do any damage in the playoffs. I don't buy into anyone else. Whereas any SEC team, you could buy into making a deep run in the college football playoff. And the grind of the SEC schedule, to me, does not compare to the grind or lack thereof of the Big Ten schedule. It's not the same. It's a bunch of average there, where it's a bunch of really good teams, and even the teams below 500 can rise up and have that ability. And they might, almost all of them, go bowling, and that should tell you something too.
Yeah, well, I'll say this. If you ask the average Indiana fan what's their most impressive victory this year, I bet you 9 out of 10 would say Michigan, because of Michigan is Michigan. They're not going to say Nebraska 56-7, the Fighting Cignettis. There's just – I really believe, because 80% of the TV sets in America live in the geographical footprint that makes up the Big Ten. That's what this is all about. They are strictly trying to keep all those people that look like Archie Bunker sitting in an old chair with white socks, drinking a PBR, watching Big Ten football in the Midwest. I mean, that's the Rust Belt. The SEC, the grind. Georgia goes from, 2 to 12? But Vince,
3 to 12, yeah.
3 to 12. The same thing happened last year. They were 1, lost to Alabama. Wasn't like they lost to Indiana and they go from 1 to 6. They're out of the playoffs. Now we're going to have General Richard Clark, the chairman of the College Football Playoff Committee, on in a couple of weeks to talk about it. And I met him at Media Days. I don't know, Brendan. I met him, and
I stay away from generals. They don't like me.
And it was funny because he had just retired from the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, and he said, you don't have to call me General." I'm like, "You're Lieutenant General. You will go to your grave as General Clark." But really impressive guy. You're going to really be impressed with him. But they get in there and we lost Dudley. I hope he can come back. But they break it down. And Vince, you brought up so many good points. Miami has been skating on thin ice for weeks. Georgia Tech got them for the second year in a row. What does this say to you, Vince?
It's
right
all
now,
weird.
Yeah,
it's just weird. This is a weird season, don't you think, Vince? It's just going to be we're going to asterisk this season because I think it's going to all correct itself.
More so than 2020.
Yeah, I just think, and I don't mean to jump the shark, but I just feel like, I really feel like we're seeing Alabama come back. It was really fun and at first, and these schools have money and we can go buy these guys and everyone, but at the end of the day, when the big schools have the big sexy, who have the big, all the facilities and all the things, I think all that will start to matter again because you're going to have that plus NIL, plus all this other, plus the big stage. So I don't know. I kind of waffle, Vince, a little bit. I'm like, well, is there parity amongst college football, or is it just going to kind of eventually drift back to
what about it? Yeah.
Well, it depends on what they do in terms of the rules. Like what is moving towards a revenue sharing do towards those rosters? I think what you're seeing with the parity right now and so many teams that are flawed, what's happened is the power conference teams have cherry picked to address needs, but by filling starter positions, they've lost a bunch of depth in numbers, and those players are going out to different schools and helping other schools catch up on the other end because it's, for a lot of them, they're good fits and they're developing at other places. So that's you're seeing the depth be issues in some of those big programs, the Georgias and the Alabamas, and then the other teams rising up because now these players that were good enough to be a good programs, now they immediately make those teams better. There were probably a few players away from taking that next step. So, but we'll see what the revenue sharing does. It could, with the scholarship rosters that, 105 now, the SEC is going to stay at 85 with a 105 player roster, but only scholarships still capped at 85. So, as usual, the rules aren't going to be the same for everybody. It'll be handled differently. But this could get really crazy, guys, with not only the college football playoff with the SEC and how many teams are all in that same group and the 1 and 2 losses. But I've seen some insane scenarios for the SEC championship game, which is being under discussed, I think. The SEC championship game, because we're all locked in on the playoffs, right, Dudley? And we're not talking as much about how valuable it is to get to Atlanta.
Does it matter? Is it going to matter?
Absolutely, because if you're a 3-loss team, if you're a 2-loss team, and you may be on the outside looking in for the committee for the playoff, if you get into that conference championship game, you can punch your own ticket because whoever wins that game gets the automatic, and then it doesn't matter what the committee thinks. Mm-hmm. And if you're ranked high enough, could also get you a bye. So it still matters for sure.
I think I like Vince. He's all feisty this morning. I like Vince this. He's all
Vince has been on a roll since early this morning, and
it's winter for Vince. He's got that pumpkin spice in him this morning.
Let's head back. Let's head back to the Ouachita, to the Boston.
Check out my background, Dudley.
I love it, man.
Red Rocks.
Right?
I grew up there. I guess this is where I grew up. That's why I'm all weird.
Yeah, Patriot and I have a daughter who spends a lot of her money going to a lot of concerts there.
So do I. My kids, I'm like, what are you doing? They're out in Red Rocks this summer for a Panic show. And I'm like, but hey, it's their money. They're working hard. Dudley,
Hey,
John Paul
I'll tell you,
Jones,
some
Dawson.
of those shows she goes to see would put me in a panic. So
I don't like the
Yes,
panic.
yes.
John B's voice.
Just the aroma. It's crazy. All right, Dudley, looking at it, we're going to talk about these games. Arkansas, Texas. I talked about advantages, disadvantages, whatever. Kind of 2-minute Cliff Note version. What do you think happens Saturday? Then I'm going to bounce back to Vince in Knoxville on Tennessee at Georgia, because here it is, week 12, and we're on the edge of our seats. It just keeps getting better.
Well, here I am on record as saying Texas will win 38-21. I think that's about where the two teams are. Obviously, Taylor Green being healthy, and he's going to be, from all indications, going through practice, is going to be able to get out there. And obviously, that's a big thing for Arkansas. Malachi Singleton is a very good quarterback, but he's still learning as he goes along. And having Taylor Green out there, you have the opportunity to have some explosive plays. Jaquindon Jackson is coming back. He was signed by Texas as a quarterback, and he's pretty fired up to play them. And he's certainly going to be fresh after being off the last 3 games. And then you're looking at, the defense. It is a lot of weapons that Texas has. We know that T. Will can put together some packages. They have had open competition in the secondary this weekend, as well as over the last 2 weeks, as well they should, because Ole Miss was just running by them left and right. There was separation all over the place. All that to be said, I go back to Arkansas will have to win the turnover battle. They will have to hold on to the football. They will have to have a time of possession, big time of possession advantage to be able to be in this game. And also, I think that it's just really simple. It's the line of scrimmage. It's always the line of scrimmage. You can have all the kind of, players you want to and talent you want to, and certainly that factors in the game. But any Arkansas-Texas game, going back to 1981 when they came here number one and left 42-11 losers, as you said, 2021, there is always a feel here that they have the opportunity to beat them no matter how good they are. And they love when they're not playing them for Texas to say, we're back, and then celebrate when they're not. They look back this year to me.
Yeah. Vince, looking at this matchup coming up Saturday in Athens, Tennessee goes to Georgia. Georgia, they're not very good. Tennessee's hearing they're the worst 8-1 team in the country. Tennessee's got a hell of a defense. Tim Banks, Rodney Garner, a defensive front with James Pierce on the edge. They're really, really good. They can run the ball well. Nico, he's learning how to read these SEC defenses. He's getting better as the season goes along. Carson Beck kind of going the other way. What do you think happens when they have kickoff Saturday between the hedges at Vince Dooley Field, Sanford Stadium? Hunker down, you silver britches. Vince Ferrara, what do you got, Lauren? It's going to be an awesome game.
Oh my gosh, it will be amazing. Now, the last time Tennessee went there in 2022, Vols were riding high. They were, they were the number one team at that time.
They were.
Because
right after the rankings came out. Yeah.
Right, the very first version, they were number one. And the offense just did not execute on the road. And we really haven't seen Tennessee's offense travel. Now, they were really rolling in points and tempo, all those things with Hendon Hooker, Jalen Hyatt, and that crew. This is a much different Tennessee team this year. And Georgia is 7-1 against Tennessee since 2016. So they've had a ton of success against the Vols. So I think the handling the crowd is a big thing for Tennessee. But it starts with the availability of Nico Iamaleava. He didn't play the second half. Now, Josh Heupel last week against Mississippi State, he might have gotten hurt in the last play of the first half. They weren't specific about it. Tennessee does not share a whole lot of details on injuries, but all that we heard was it was an upper body injury and that he would not return for the second half. Gaston Moore would get him to the finish line. He was solid, but there's a difference between Nico and Gaston Moore. So he has been practicing. Pete Thamel from ESPN reported after Josh Heupel told us that he was out there on Monday and had a good day, and he thinks he'd be good to go. Pete Thamel reported that it's still undetermined whether he would play. He's in concussion protocol and then practice with the team on Tuesday. But what is he doing? What's the extent of what he's doing? So that's a big part of it. If Tennessee doesn't have Nico, it's going to be very difficult to win this game. But Georgia's been really struggling offensively. They finally got their starting five on the offensive line back with Tate Ratledge, potential first-round pick, and the rest of that group. But they could not block Ole Miss. And Tennessee's D-line is right there with Ole Miss, if not better. So that's a potential advantage for Tennessee if Georgia can't get their offensive line right. They can't run the ball. Carson Beck has 12 interceptions in the last 6 games, which is just strange. And I think he's putting too much pressure on himself because they can't block in front of him, and they haven't been able to run. Right. Georgia's defense now has a lot of pressure on them too, and they don't have those dominant first-round picks that are on the Philadelphia Eagles right now. So they're still good, but they're having to shoulder too much of the load. But look, we saw what they did against Texas. So Kirby Smart, is elite for a reason. They have the dudes there. Can they come together in a rivalry type of game? They're at home. They have the nation's longest win streak at 28 consecutive games. They haven't lost since 2019. So it's going to be tough for Tennessee. Got to run the ball earlier and not fall behind, and then the defense travels. We'll see. They've given up 100-yard rushers in each of the last 2 games, so that's a little bit of an issue they got to clean up. I think they're starting to miss Keenan Peely these last couple of games because you have aggressive outside backers kind of rushing off the edge, and then Kentucky and Mississippi State just popping runs up the middle, sealing their inside tackles. So Tennessee's got to clean that up, but otherwise they've been turning teams over and elite defensively. So it's going to be a game.
I think Georgia's still really, really good, obviously. I mean, that's definite with the players they have. But the cloak of invincibility is now often on the floor.
Right.
You could just listen to their comments after they got field stormed last week about how, that must have been tough when other teams have had to feel that and all that. I wonder, if the confidence on offense is, probably the biggest reason that they're not getting it done this season. I've been waiting for Georgia fans to call out and make it break up with his girlfriend. I'm sure it's her fault. That's how it always happens in the pros, at least. Tony Romo went downhill. So is Carrie Underwood or Jessica Simpson or whoever it was. But, I look forward to watching that game. It is 2 of the better teams in the country, but it's also 2 teams, and especially one in Georgia. They never expected to be toward the lower end of the 12 team, not the top.
Yeah. They would be out right now.
Yes.
Well, for both of y'all, Vince, I was going to say for both of y'all are spot on your commentary and your insight. And Vince, going back to these playoff rankings, it's almost like there's a feeling of Georgia. Let's just get rid of them. We're tired of them. Like they call it Alabama fatigue or whatever. Mm-hmm. That's ridiculous. But you're right. Georgia's missing those monster difference makers on defense. But for Carson Beck, not having Ladd McConkey, not having Brock Bowers out of Napa, California. I mean, that's kind of like going duck hunting. You think that you're a good shot, but the 2 guys you always take with you are both world champion, trap shooters. They're in Shotgun News every year, shooter of the year. When you don't have those guys, you ain't such a good shooter, are you?
No, I'll take your word for it.
I know that feeling.
But you're absolutely right. The lack of explosive playmakers on offense is an issue for them. And you wondered, all right, they'll be just next man up, next 5-star to step up. Haven't been as dynamic in the backfield or receiver or tight end. And then another thing to consider, you mentioned the rankings, the desperation that you could very well see Georgia have to play with in this game. Some people think there might be an outside chance for an SEC team with 3 losses to get in. I'm not so sure about that unless they lose an amazing game in the conference championship game, and that's their 3rd loss. that would be a maybe. But you get a third conference loss, I think it's going to be very tough for you. So you expect them with their basically a season on the line mentality. And now this is Kirby Smart's wheelhouse, right? When they win the national championship, he's talking about how nobody picked us to win. Everybody thought we were going to win 5 or 6 or 7 games. He's really got something to kind of rally the troops and say nobody believes in us. And that might be pretty powerful with the talent there. And if you're Tennessee, if you don't win this game, you could very well be in a big group with of 2 lost teams with a schedule that is not very strong. Now, you have a great win in Alabama, but where's your next best win after that? It's not good because North Carolina State didn't turn out to be good. Oklahoma, you don't have, the Missouris and the LSUs, and even South Carolina would have been helpful for you. If they beat Vanderbilt, that'll be their next best win probably. So if Tennessee wins that game, they're going to the playoff, and they're likely even going to Atlanta, which they haven't been to since 2007.
Yeah. Let me say real quick before we go to Dudley, I want Dudley's response. Landers Ford, the number 1 Ford dealership in the Mid-South, $500 off for SEC Sidelines audience members on your next purchase of a car, truck, or SUV. Click that QR code there. Poplar and Houston Levy, LandersFordMemphis.com. Open Monday through Saturday. Service department opens at 7 a.m. They go till 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Regular sales, 8 a.m., 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Closed on Sundays. Don Kitchens is the president, general manager. Brad Bellamy, Ken Ritchie, all the whole team out there. Everybody is focused on making the customer experience ideal. And they're great people to work with, invested all over the Mid-South, the Landers Center in DeSoto County. They are everywhere on 6 stadiums, high schools in the area, also title sponsor of the Memphis Touchdown Club. Ask for Brad Bellamy when you call out there. He is the GM. He will get you hooked up with a salesman and get to work. Great people to work with. And right down the street is Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company. Look, it's getting time to get ready for Christmas. A lot of people already are. They're open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Over 7,000 pairs of men's and women's boots. Great-looking women's clothing. Barber. They've got Filson. Where you go? STS, Pendleton, Schaefer. These boots they got. Anderson Bean makes great boots. I got a pair of Greater Kudu boots recently. Greater Kudu is like an elk in Africa. But Charles Hall, his wife Laura, JM, Raven, Squidward, the whole team out there, they'll get you what you need. That turtle box right there, I've got 2 of them. Man, you can play some serious tunes on there. You can even drop that thing in the water. As long as you got the seal, it'll click, and it can go underwater. It comes back up. It's still playing music. Proud to have them as a sponsor, as we are of all of our sponsors. You can check them all out at www.sidelines.live at our website. Dudley, this Arkansas game, like I said, I'm going to be in Little Rock here for a lunch meeting at 11:30 today. All Hogs at Bossa Nova in Little Rock. There's going to be a lot of talk about it. There are going to be some attorneys in there, so they're going to be able to make a good case for the Hogs getting the win. What has to happen? What's the best case scenario for the Razorbacks versus Texas? Because Quinn Ewers, Travis Williams, and that defense are going to hit him as much as they can. He's missed 7 games, maybe 8 in the last 3 years. Not that you want to hurt anybody, but he has shown a tendency to get banged up and not be able to go sometimes because it's the grind.
Yeah, a couple of things. Number one, I'm glad to hear that Squidward landed with a good job. I was worried about how things were working out. There. Love the nickname. Yeah. I go back and I'm sure the lawyers can come up with a better case than I have. I'm not a lawyer. I watch Perry Mason. I watch Matlock. I feel like Law and Order and all that. Let's be honest. Arkansas cannot fall behind. They've got to have something good happen early. They had the opportunity against Ole Miss to get some touchdowns, to get some more points. Didn't happen. They cannot play from behind. This is too good of a Texas team. So it has to happen early. They have to have some good things happen to them early. It's better. I do think they're better this season than they were last year. We've talked about last year being a cluster, but they're going to be a front running team. If they get behind, it's not going to happen. If it does, I'll go on here and say I was wrong. I have no problems being wrong, but
yeah,
it simply is a turnover thing. You've got to go. You've got to play a nearly perfect game. You can't have the turnover. You got to win the line of scrimmage and all that.
Yeah, turnovers will kill any team. Even the best team can't win turning the ball over 5 times. Yeah, and Dudley, come back. He's frozen in time. But Vince, I want to hear your comments and also let people know how they can follow you. And we'll go back to Dudley and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, and Arkansas can maybe ruin things for Texas, because Texas also, like Tennessee, the schedule didn't look that great to begin with. But what's their best win? At Vanderbilt? Because Michigan didn't turn out to be good for them. So they're in a similar boat. But even with that weak schedule and not having a marquee win, they're 3 as a 1-loss team. Why is that? So who has the better win? Tennessee over Alabama or Texas over Vanderbilt? They have pretty similar schedules and strength of schedules.
Yeah.
One's got the Texas brand. One is being hopped over by the Indianas and the BYUs of the world. So that, and look, they're the only ones not in the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten, when you hear Ward Manuel and the committee talk about these teams, he gets specific on some teams. Oh, this backup, they're having to play backup linemen, and this tight end is great, all that. But they don't talk about specifics of Tennessee. Did anyone mention that Tennessee played without their starting quarterback in the second half, yet still pulled away last week? Or that Dylan Sampson has 20 rushing touchdowns and is among the best players in college football? We hear specifics about the Big Ten. He's not making the decision, but Peter Burns had a good point. If you're a sitting AD, you should not be running the College Football Playoff Committee, even if there's nothing going wrong.
Right.
It's not a good look when things start to stack in against or for a certain conference. So you can hit me up on all the socials. It's at Vince Sports, VINCE Sports, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter /X. And then on our website, we got podcasts of our show, Sports Talk with myself and John Wilkerson, 991thesportsanimal.com. Got so much going on. Vol Network pregame interviews, basketball and football are overlapping. We had the Fall World Series in baseball over the weekend. We have high school football playoffs, TV shows. I mean, it's just everything going on right now, but it's fun. It's football. Let's do it.
Too much is never enough. Hey, also want to thank Dudley Dawson, hogville.net, executive producer Brendan Martin, always just unbelievable job how we make this happen. Norman Jetmundsen, Sewanee Unrivaled, 1899.org, and, of course, Jake Wimberly down in Jackson, Mississippi, ESPN 105.9, The Afternoon Drive. Takes a team. Every time you get behind this microphone, takes a whole team. It's not just one person. It's about the whole group. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Support our sponsors, and we will be back tomorrow with a lot to talk about. It just keeps getting better, climbing the wall, going into week 12 of the 24 college football season. And check out the Buddy Martin Show tonight on this same channel, 9 p.m. Eastern. If you love football, tune in and watch. Can't get enough. And I'll be listening to the Sports Animal on my way to Little Rock. I like to know what's going on, so that's what we'll do. Thanks for watching, everybody. Good night, John Boy. All right. Let's see. Brendan, hopefully we're wrapped up here, but should be tagging out here right now.
I think we're still alive there, Rob.
Okay. But, well, I guess hopefully we don't have any technical problems there, but we're wrapping up. But Brendan will tell us when we are wrapped up. But let me again say, all of our sponsors, find them at sidelines.live, like Matei's Garage in East Memphis, located on Black Road, open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Tom Martin's Body Shop downtown, G.E. Patterson and B.B. King, the best people in the business. And the Vitamin Shop, Oxford and Olive Branch, Mississippi. Hit the QR code. They're all up on the screen. So, okay. And Vince, one other thing I will say to you, Tennessee, you're talking about the second half without Nico after he got banged up. That was pretty impressive, and nobody's talking about that. I still don't know who I'm picking in this game Saturday down in Athens because both teams there's so many what they can't do, what they can do. Tennessee's 8-1, Georgia's, lost 2. I just got to think a team with the best defensive front who can run the ball, defense travels, and then Nico's going to need some deep balls to be completed because that's what opens up that whole offense. But I bet your callers I bet it's a great week to do a show in Knoxville.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. First you start to talk about, you look back on Mississippi State, the Nico conversation really dominated. Then you start, the playoff, you start looking towards Georgia. Will they have Nico or not? And then the playoff rankings come out, and then they're like, why is this team here? Why is this team ahead of us? All that kind of stuff. It'll segue back to Georgia before long. And then, injuries, not only with Nico, Dante Thornton left that game, upper body injury also. So there's a lot of factors in this game. You're right. It's a close call. Maybe Tennessee's in a better spot because they can run the ball. And you mentioned their defense can travel. They didn't have a very good defense last time. So they fell behind, and then they're playing uphill, and Georgia was just sending their front four at Tennessee. Maybe it'll be a little bit different with the style that they play at nowadays as opposed to 2 years ago. So definitely Gassamore did a good job in closing out that game for Tennessee. You mentioned the deep shots. Nico hit a couple of those. They checked those boxes. He had 2 long touchdown passes, and both of them in the first half. And they scored in their first series for the first time since the Kent State game, which was their game 3 this season. That's how long it's been. So taking baby steps on offense, Nico hitting those deep shots, going to be big for them.
Well, one other thing, Vince, looking at Nico, and we're kind of going a little extra innings here, overtime. Is Nico, in your opinion, progressing like you thought he would? Is he ahead, behind? Where is he, in your opinion?
Well, he's not where I thought he would be at this stage of this year. I didn't think he was going to be a Heisman contender. I'm surprised that he had sort of the steps back and the inaccuracies, but he is starting to take some small steps each game, checking some more boxes and improve. That game against Kentucky was his best game, 28 of 38. So a couple touchdown passes. So he hit on the 2 touchdowns in those deep shots in that first half before he went out. So you're starting to see progressions. I'd like to see Heupel in this offense help him a little bit, get him in some shorter to intermediate rhythm throws. I don't know if they don't have confidence in him and making some of those throws, but I'd like it to be more than just wide receiver screen deep shot. I'd like to see a little bit more in that offense to help him out, maybe get him in a rhythm early, but they're going to have to evolve this offense a little bit more. Also, the offensive line is getting a little bit better in conjunction with Nico getting a little bit better. I think that's not a coincidence.
Yeah. Hey, I want to apologize. Brendan's going, you're fine. You don't have to close out. We lost Dudley. The technical gremlins got him up in the Boston Mountains in Northwest Arkansas. So it was like going, what happened to Dudley? But and all of a sudden, I think something was wrong with the chat room because all of a sudden these people are coming in. I like Blind Squirrel Sports. Might as well keep going for another segment or two. We'll just go a couple of more minutes till Brendan tells us to wrap up. But Vince, your take on Tennessee, and I saw a great picture of you with Bob Kessling and the Vol Network. Color this one in checkerboard, orange and white. Tennessee Volunteers. I mean, this is a big week. Audrey's cousin Mark Ham, loves Tennessee, and he's got a daughter who is a junior at Georgia. So he will be I know you got to go, but he's going to be down there as a Vol with a daughter who's a student at Georgia. It's very conflicting for Molly and Mark. So ought to be a fun one to go. But look, I know you got to get to a meeting, but Vince, again, thanks so much for being on here with us. You can't get enough of this stuff. And what I love the most is how much preparation you put in to every broadcast that you do. You are wearing the big boots that you got, of course, at Hewlett and Dunn. Look at that preparation. I'm telling you, Perry Mason, forget about it. Hamilton Berger has no chance, the district attorney who never beat Perry. It was overturned the one time he did. But again, take 2 on saying we're done for the day. See y'all tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Thank you, Blind Squirrel and Shoney. Appreciate it.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal and the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.